Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Late Night in Oslo. Here are your amazing hosts, Rick and Malou Wheatley.
Daddy, that's so 2017.
2017? What's 2018?
The floss.
Okay, that's that, like... Can you show us?
I'm not allowed to show you.
Why not?
Because it's 2019 now.
Okay, what's 2019 now?
You do like the whoa.
Okay, how's that work?
So you throw an invisible ball to me.
Okay, let me... okay, I'm going to do that.
Yeah. And then I do the whoa. And it's like catching the ball.
Okay, so that's like what's now.
No, it was a little more like August 2019.
So what's now?
There's not really like a thing now.
Okay.
Like, trends come and they go.
So clearly there's a few things we adults don't have totally nailed down. Things are moving quickly. Malou, question for you. I get the feeling that you and your friends don't really have a good idea what your parents do for work. No. What do you think I do?
Something involving business and a lot of traveling.
Okay. Interesting. There's been a lot of talk recently about what kids think about how well we, parents, adults, everybody in the audience here are doing taking care of the world you're going to inherit. How do you think we're doing?
It doesn't really look like you've done anything, at least not in the right direction.
Jeez. Okay. So we're hoping that our panelists that are going to come up in a minute are a little bit easier on us than this particular crowd here. Today, we spent some time getting into the issues, as it were. We talked this morning about the imperative. We went to the studios. We got into some detail around some specific problems. Right now is the inflection point before we tomorrow start to try to figure out what we might be able to do together around some of those problems. We thought it would be cool then to play a little bit with the idea of unlikely heroes. The people who start something here and something here where nobody knows that it's even happening. And slowly those things all connect together and they create such a change that it changes what's happening on the center stage. Sometimes those things don't come from government. They don't come from business. They happen out here, and they change everything here in the middle. So we've got a few examples of folks that are going to help us with that. Malou, should we bring our guests up?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, shoot.
So first, shall we welcome Strive Masiyiwa?
Strive, welcome to the stage. Welcome.
Can I greet you?
Oh, please.
Thank you. I've got a few daughters of my own, and I know how it feels.
It's tough, isn't it? It's very tough. Please have a seat right there. So Strive is the founder of Econet, and I think perhaps, well, other than the fact that I understand you lay almost 100 kilometers of fiber optic cable on the African continent each day,
Yeah.
you've also contributed to the education of 250,000 young people, many of whom are orphans, and very much more that we hope to learn some more about here in just a little bit. So thank you very much for joining us. Malou, who's next?
Then can we welcome Nada Ahmed?
Nada. So Nada... Nada's story begins with the absence of an engagement ring. Right? So when Nada's... I don't know if her husband is here, but when Nada's husband proposed, she said, I really feel like there's a better way to spend that money than on a ring. And that led to her first, as she put it, her first school in Pakistan. So implication there will be more. So 120 or 30 some odd students. School just opened around the summer. So Nada, welcome. She's also a senior manager in Aker Solutions. So great story, Nada. Malou, who do we have next?
Yeah, let's welcome Johann Olav Koss.
Exactly. Johan, please. Welcome. Thank you very much. So Johan is the founder of Right to Play, which is a nonprofit that uses sport and play to protect, educate, and empower children all over the world. Mm-hmm. That's like a big deal.
Yes.
And He got to that big deal after winning a number of gold medals and 23 some odd world championships, et cetera, in speed skating. So welcome, Johan. So we've got a cool group here. Some would say some of these folks are heroes, or I don't know how unlikely you all are, but we'll get to that in a minute. But we thought that we could, now that we've heard all the great stuff that you've done, we could get to know you by playing a little game. You guys up for a game?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Malou, why don't you have a seat there right next to Strive? So, how many of you have ever played Never Have I Ever?
I've never played it.
You and I both.
Okay.
So, Never Have I Ever, we have these paddles here, and they have one side that looks like that, and then another side that looks like this. And the rules, Malou and I are going to play with you.
Okay.
The rules here are quite simple, and that is that I'm going to say something, never have I ever, ... and then you're going to show the audience if you have or you haven't.
Okay.
Right?
Remember, be honest.
Okay. So you're going to tell the truth, right? So we have a test question to see if everybody's understood the rules. A particularly important one that goes like this. Never have I ever used my partner's or dad's toothbrush without telling them. Go ahead and show the truth. Okay, Johan. See, this is when we're going to get to know these folks now. Strive, I feel like we should begin with you. Do you want to say a few words about what happened?
Well, I've got 5 daughters.
I don't know if your story's similar, Johan.
And my wife is sitting here, and you know, I couldn't lie. She found out after I used it. Obviously, I got yelled at. You're not allowed to use the toothbrush, but
right.
It was a moment of desperation.
Moment of desperation, but that was the last
totally,
time.
And it was like the only toothbrush I could find at the time.
All right.
On a travel, far into the mountains.
All right, okay, okay. Excellent, thank you, good. So I think we understand the game. Second question.
Never have I ever Googled myself.
Google.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Okay. Malou, what did you find?
Nothing.
Okay. Johan, interesting story behind why you Googled yourself?
I have 4 kids, and I had to show them how important I am.
Okay.
I actually have a YouTube evening with the kids on Friday night showing my old speed skating race.
Do you? Is attendance really high?
Yeah, 4.
4, okay.
4 kids.
Excellent.
My wife has left that.
She doesn't participate any longer, okay.
She thinks she's boring at the moment now.
Right, okay.
Every Friday, you know.
And then Strive, you don't bother.
No, I don't.
You don't bother. Any reason?
I like to feel nice about myself.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. How about you, Nada?
No, I just wanted to see if there's any dirt out there.
Okay.
You know?
All right.
Like before an interview, just make sure it's clean.
Make sure it's clean. So you are up for the dirt, you are not up for the dirt.
No.
Okay, fair enough. Good. Okay, next one. Why don't you read that one there, Malou?
Never have I ever lied to get a job.
Never have I. How many people's bosses are sitting in the audience?
Oh, so close.
Okay, I think we should just move on from that one there. Let's just leave that one alone. Okay.
It's simple. I've never applied for a job.
Oh, that's excellent.
I work for myself for most of my life.
Cool. Next one, a little bit different type of question.
Never have I ever failed miserably at something.
Oh.
I mean, you're just getting started, so you may be ahead of the wave that we're all behind.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anybody can care to contribute a good story of a failure?
Your turn.
My turn. No, I mean there've been many failures, so it's hard to pick the big one. Actually, let me pick one that maybe goes back to the previous one where I was kind of not sure if I've lied in a job interview, but I think I have.
Okay.
Because I couldn't think of it because I've been out there interviewing a lot. I put myself out there a lot. So when you do that, you do risk failure. So I remember once, this was when I was young, and I was in Pakistan, and I was applying for. I was 13 years old, and I always wanted. So maybe this may be relevant for you. I always wanted to go abroad, and there was this American organization that was selecting students to go to NASA for the summer. And I wanted to apply, and they asked me a question, and they said, what's your favorite movie? And I had to think of an answer really quick, and I had just that summer, The Matrix had come out. So I said, The Matrix. But I said it too fast, because I had sort of seen it, but the print was really bad. Like at that time, you had these tapes, and someone had videotaped it in the cinema, so it was really hard to see. So I hardly got anything. And for a 13-year-old to really understand Matrix. And so then they were like, okay, so tell us about the movie. And I just couldn't. And I was so embarrassed. And of course, I didn't get that, summer.
So I guess there's no point asking who's watched illegal movies. But
we didn't have a choice in Pakistan. I'll just say that.
Fair point. Yeah. So, but the last question, and then we're gonna pivot a little bit. Is also a movie question, and I'm gonna read this one because it's so serious. Never have I ever cried while watching the Titanic. Anybody? Ooh. Okay.
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it. That's fair. Johan, you've seen it?
Yes, I saw it.
Does he cry in movies? He cries in movies all the time.
I cries, but not in that one. Leonardo DiCaprio didn't make it and do it for me,
All right.
I have to say.
Malou, did we learn anything about unlikely heroes from this game?
I think we have to go a little deeper.
We have to go a little deeper. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
difficult to do it from this game. Okay, we can put our paddles down. We'll release you from further questions of that type. So, one of the things about unlikely heroes is that often they get started all by themselves out someplace in the world without the rest of us knowing about it. And they work and they work and they work, and maybe things work and maybe they don't, and then sometime, somehow, it all comes together and something happens. Strive, I understand you have a little bit of travel pressure, and that you have to leave us reasonably soon. So I'd like to start with you, and I'd like to also offer you the opportunity when the time comes to parachute off the side of the stage so that you can make your flight, because we don't want to make you late. When you decided to never apply for a job, but to do things quite differently when you did start to work, and then dedicate so much of your time to helping others in a variety of ways that we've heard about today, how did that thought process work?
Well, I was 26.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 58 now. So it's kind of so. I decided I worked for a government telephone company, and I just realized this didn't work for me. It's terrible inefficiency, and so I had an option: do I leave the country and go abroad? Or do I stay and try and do something? And my country had just, I come from Zimbabwe, and my country had just got its independence. There was a lot of excitement around. And I thought, yeah, why not be an entrepreneur? So I went and started a small business. I really didn't know much of what I was doing, but I survived. And then a couple of years later, probably about 4 or 5 years, I ran a company with about 700 people. And I realized that something was going on, because a lot of young people that worked for me were dying of something that was then quite mysterious, which was HIV/AIDS.
Okay.
And it broke out into a major pandemic where we were burying sometimes 10, 15 of our employees a week.
Wow.
And I mean, we thought everybody's going to die because it was that bad, you know. But the big challenge that my wife and I realized at the time was a lot of these young construction workers and engineers were leaving young families, sometimes 5 years old, some just starting school. So we came up with this idea that why don't we just keep them in school? So we started going to the schools and say, we'll pay for the school fees, we'll pay for them to. So my wife took it on as a full-time job. She quit her job. And that kind of mushroomed. And over time, one day she came to me, she says, we've got about 100 of these kids that we're looking after now. I think we should stop doing it from your salary. The next thing she says, we got 1,000 now.
Wow.
And, so we just kept supporting the kids. And one time at the height of the sort of support program, we were supporting about 40,000 kids a year, keeping them in school.
Wow.
And it just sort of grew on from there, and as they get older, it's been some 20-odd years now, 25, I think. As they got older, they had other demands because we were like their parents. We kept them in school. They come and they say, I've got great grades, and I think I should go to university. We said, sure. And so as we as a company got better, we never went looking for money outside our group. As we got better at it, we developed more programs, we became more engaged with education. And we started sending some really smart kids around the world to top universities. So this year we have 350 in the United States.
Wow.
And so wherever we operate, we engage over education, and that sort of became something that became a mission for us.
So Malou, that's what some people do for work. What do you think about that?
It's really cool.
Really cool.
I mean, this doesn't really look like work to me, what you're doing right now, but
that sounds like work?
real work.
Fair enough, fair enough. Thank you. Just one follow-up question. One of the, so I was a little bit afraid of suggesting to all of you that you were unlikely heroes, but when I read your bios and thought about the places that you've been and the people you've met and what you've worked on, it struck me that you must have seen some very unlikely heroes in your travels and some people that nobody in this room will ever hear about in their whole entire lives, but that maybe you'd be willing to share the story of one.
Yeah, I think for me personally, the most unlikely heroes, obviously you see a lot over time, and we've been around as long as I have. You see a few things in Africa. But the most recent for me was during the Ebola crisis in West Africa. The African Union, which isn't a government, it's not like the European Union, it doesn't have a lot of money, called me one morning, and the leader, the chair of the African Union, called me and she said, I need some help from you. And so it ended up with me agreeing to drop my job for a couple of weeks. It became months in time, but it was to go out and mobilize money and resources to send healthcare workers to Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. And we raised the money, for the mission, but we needed to send Africans to the area. And and when we called for people who were willing to go, it was hard. It was just extraordinary.
Okay.
People came from all over Africa. They were writing to me. They were young people. It was just extraordinary. We had probably 10 times the volunteers that we needed. And we had young nurses, young doctors just quit their jobs and said, just give me the ticket, I'm on my way. Okay. And in the end, we sent about 890.
Wow.
And they were there throughout the entire pandemic. And for me, they were the most unlikely. Those are the unsung heroes, because finding money was one thing.
Yeah.
But to go out there, and these guys knew that they could die there.
Yeah. No guarantee of purchase.
They'd never been there.
Wow.
But they came from virtually every major African country. So it was just going to these airports, giving them food vouchers and stuff like this. And we had people sending in anything that they could, to see them off. And so I went from capital city to capital city, shaking hands with these guys as they got on the plane. And that, for me, was the most amazing thing to see.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So Nada, the introduction I gave was sort of a partial of what you've been up to. I think it's interesting. We have a business leader here whose sort of deepest memories and most touching moments have to do with addressing large critical social issues. We have an athlete. We're going to hear from a former athlete, probably still athlete, Johan, right? No. Okay, that we're going to hear from in a little bit. But then we have Nada, who is perhaps the person that the most people in the audience, at least in some way, can identify with closest.
I hope so.
Nada is a senior manager at a great company in Oslo. And instead of getting an engagement ring, decided that she should try to start a school or do something different that led to this school. Talk us through that process.
Yeah, so 4 years ago, I moved to Norway about 7 years ago. And 4 years ago, my now husband, we were sitting together and we were thinking, we were going to get married. I'm from Pakistan. He's from Norway, and even in today's time, for like us two families to get together, there was a lot of friction. And when we were past all of that, and sort of the families agreed, we said, okay, yes, we're going to do this. And we were sitting there, and he was like, well, okay, now we're going to get married. Does that mean I need to buy you a ring? And we started thinking about it, and I was like, why spend all that money on a ring? It's not really something that's important to me. Could we do something bigger that's beyond us? We're two different cultures coming together. Could we find something more meaningful? And for me, having come from Pakistan, having been lucky enough that my mom, when we were growing up, realized that a good quality education comes at a hefty price. Thank you.
Thank you, Strive.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Honor.
Thank you.
Hey, the honor was all mine. I look forward when you are the Prime Minister and you can show me around again. Thank you so much. God bless you. I know what you're going to be doing for a living.
Safe journey, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. No, so, people don't realize living in Norway where it's a right for every child to go to school. And in a country like Pakistan, you have 22 million kids who don't get to go to school. Right. And the state of the public schools are really in a dire situation. So my mom really wanted that her kids get a good opportunity. And she realized, when we were young, that my dad at that time didn't have a stable job, that she would have to go out and get a job and become a teacher, because that way her kids could go to school for free. So she had to sort of get out of her comfort zone, make that sacrifices, so that a world of opportunities would open up for me. And there I was, sitting in Norway now, having a really good job and enjoying my life. But my heart was always that one day I wanted to give back. I wanted to do something for Pakistan so that more girls and boys can have the same opportunity the way I did. And so that's kind of how the idea started. And we said, we started looking into the problem even more, and understanding what the problem on the ground is. And we found that there are lots of organizations who are working with the underprivileged children of Pakistan and giving them that opportunity, that helping hand. We decided, we found an organization called the Citizens Foundation. It's now the biggest, it started about 20 years ago, biggest organization in South Asia, working with underprivileged kids, giving them the opportunity to go to school, now educating 200,000 kids who otherwise just would be on the streets, right? And so we said, why don't we just have a goal of building a school and use that money that we would use for the ring. And then for our wedding, that was sort of our big thing, that all our friends and family came together, and we said, we want to dedicate our wedding to this cause, so please donate. And people gave a lot more than they usually would, and we were very moved by it, and we continued working on that until a few months ago, when our school was finally opened, and 120 girls and boys who otherwise would be on the streets started going to school in Pakistan. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of parts of your story that are, many parts of your story that are inspirational, but one that I think is a little bit cool is how you explained when we met last night, the two of you working in business and applying your analytical skills that you use every day at work to analyze the situation in Pakistan and figure out how should we do this. That you have a lot that you use every day that can also be applied in different spaces. And I suppose that's a little of what we're trying to do in the studios too, is use those muscles on these other sorts of problems too.
Yeah. No, and that's something that my husband said to me, because when we were sitting there discussing this, I said, one day I want to do this. And he said, why one day? Why not today? Why can't we start today? Because we have everything we need.
Yeah.
And so it just takes that small step.
Excellent, thank you. So why one day, why not today?
Why not today?
Perfect. What did you think of that one, Mother?
It's really cool that you can, sort of think outside of the box when you feel like it's not necessary to buy the ring there.
Right?
Yeah.
Cool. So Johan, you shared a video before the exchange that I wish we could have shown. And I was really touched by the fact that what your foundation is doing, it isn't only the right to play, it's also other things like the right to not get married if you don't want to get married, and a range of other things. Could you tell us the story about how you got started on that journey and who you've met along the way that's inspired you?
Thank you. Yeah, well, I'm inspired by my fellow couch potatoes here. Now I'm saying, at least I am one. But it's incredible. When I was preparing for the Olympics here in Norway in '94, I had a chance to go to Africa. I was an ambassador for Olympic Aid Program and went to Eritrea. And through that trip, I thought I was going to be the hero, not knowing that the kids I met in the streets of Asmara became my heroes of my lives and my guiding post since, I would say. Because it's been now 25 years since that trip in '93, and I felt they told me so much about dignity, respect, and optimism. They told me about what their dreams and hopes were. And as an athlete, I never thought I could necessarily contribute much other than glamour and attention. But here I found that sport and play became an incredible critical part for a child's upbringing, and basic life skills, developing their understanding of rules, actually giving them motivation to stay in school, being who they are, and having a place to fail, for instance, and set new goals and targets. And this was a discovery for me, which I'd taken for granted, living in Norway. And it gave me, it's interesting, it gave me a purpose to compete at the Olympics. It gave me a purpose bigger than myself. It gave me something I could use to win. This is kind of crazy enough to say. So these children helped me find a reason for why I could win, because if I could win, I could do something more for them. And I didn't know that at that time that, I realized later that through the process of my life after I retired, I found that sport and play wasn't used as a tool for development in the world. And I tried to convince the United Nations, and I met every single imaginary leader in the world, that they find that it's a luxury, it's not good enough, it's all that kind of reasons for not doing things. And then I founded Right to Play in 2000 due to the reason where I felt like, okay, if nobody else is doing it, I had to do it. And then started literally from scratch again, with no funding but a lot of networks and a lot of people, and then a lot of kind of endurance positivity around it, and people believed in it. And of course, I'm so inspired listening to Nada School, in Pakistan, because we've been working in Pakistan since 2003. And when we started there was a conflict between India and Pakistan. Everybody was talking about the potential nuclear war. And we were the only people who went in and started thinking that, okay, we need to work with these people and trying to get girls in schools, which is a big challenge still in Pakistan, as we know. And then talking to mothers and having them going with their daughters into an area to play, and that play facilitation became access to school, and the girls get access. And we have over 250,000 children in Pakistan in our program today, which is a start. But it started with 50 women, on the ground in one little tiny community, and we see in Africa a number of places. So has the same, and you talked about unlikely heroes. I met a boy who had literally nothing after sport festivals, and he had nothing, but he saw a girl who had participated but had even less. He had a banana and he was hungry, both were hungry, and he shared it, and he said, look after yourself, look after one another. He said it in Swahili, and that's just because he had learned about sharing in our program, and that's our philosophy, we write it on the ball and they play and they learn those type of things. And we're like, oh my God, like what I found so incredible, inspiring is that, and you saw in the video, and I hope all of you go through, if you actually go on Xynteo on our...
What's the web address?
Well, it's just righttoplay.com, and you find it. It's called The Rise. What we see is young people rising up to what is the unqualified difference in the world, and their unrespect, and they're rising up for dignity. They're rising up for their way of living. And there was a 15-year-old girl from Mali, which is an internally displaced girl, who wrote the anthem, which you hear the words in that. And she wrote it based on how her feeling was about standing up and making a change. And I'm very, very passionate about creating these areas, platforms, and opportunities for young people to come and rise up. Like, how can they stand up? Give them the opportunity. If they get it, they use it. And it's our responsibility to create that space for them. And that's what I feel is super important for us to do.
Thank you. Thank you. So what do you think about young people rising up?
Well, I would not be happy if I wasn't allowed to play soccer or do other sports. So I think it's cool that we can make kids that maybe don't have that much help at home and for school already have struggles there, that they can be able to play sports and stuff.
Did you notice anything that was in common between the three people, Strive and Nada and Johan?
They have all worked for people with not too much of a background to get the chance to at least have a better way to live.
A better future.
Yeah, a better future.
So it's interesting that Strive and his wife get to a point where they're suddenly taking care of many thousands of people, and that's just natural. And it sort of surprises them when it happens. It was just the right thing to do, and they did it. And Nada, I think it's so inspiring about this. And this is practical. We can take this into tomorrow. Why someday when we could do it right now? And then this idea, Johan, of being faced with the folks in the world who supposedly know the most about all of this and tell you that it's a luxury, and then having you say, hell no, it's not a luxury, and finding a way to do it, but then also having the vision to extend it, seriously, watch the video, you'll see what I mean, to extend it beyond just sport to all of these other important things. So thank you so much for your stories, and thank you so much for standing out and doing something a little bit different. And we have only one more thing that we'd like to do before we go, and it's sort of another game. Is that cool? It's a quick one.
Yeah.
We're going to do it 2 times instead of 3, because we're down 1 player. But actually, Malou, why don't you be the first one? Can you do that?
What?
So we're going to do we're going to do the lightning round now.
Yeah.
So why don't you be the first person in your lightning round? What do you think about that? So in this lightning round, there's, on the clocks here, something's going to happen on the side of the screen. Is there something on there? So there's a clock on the screen that says 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Malou's going to count this off. We would like the 2 of you, but starting with you, Malou, to give all of these people a piece of advice for what they should go for tomorrow during the second day of the studios. Do you want to play? You don't have to play.
I want to play, but yeah, maybe not 30 seconds.
You don't have to talk for 30 seconds.
Okay.
Just say whatever you'd like for advice
Yeah.
for people tomorrow, okay? All right. But you have to start the clock for yourself. Are you ready?
Okay. Ready, set, go.
All right,
Wait,
you're
is
on.
it on? Yeah. Okay, just be happy and
Uh-huh.
smile, and just spread happiness to everyone, and make everyone's day a good day.
Yeah?
And then do what you stand for tomorrow, and set goals for yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. Excellent. Okay, and then you can launch Nada.
No, I mean, just remember, no problem is too big for us to tackle. We have already tackled lots of big problems in this world. It's about what Arna Solberg said, going step by step. So for me, it's about taking that one small step and say, okay, maybe I'm going to donate this money towards something, and then it becomes something bigger. So just figure out what that first step for you is, and then see it become into this snowball effect.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ready, set, go.
Wow. Stay less on the screens. Look around yourself at people and start talking to one another. Figure out what we can actually solve, and trying to stand up against the way we are trying to differentiate us, and fighting and enhancing our differences. I think it's the biggest issue we have in the world today. Try to bring everyone on the playground to play and find solutions. That's where I'm at.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Malou, this was our first shot at doing something like this together. How do you think we did?
I think we did pretty well.
Think we did pretty well? Okay. Thank you. It was a pleasure to do it with you. Okay. Great. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you.
Nada, thanks so much.